love, period. That's not a motto. That's not a vision statement. That's a freaking mic drop. Love. End of the conversation. End of the story. Shut up. And on that note, thank you for coming today. My whole life, I've felt that not only am I a psychologist, but more importantly than that, I'm an explorer of consciousness. And I want to know, how great can I go? How deep can I feel? What can I do in this moment to really expand myself into it? And everything I've ever done in my career is about that. I've done research on creativity and on health and wellness and healing. And what I have found in both of those strands is that it always boils down to love. I've said to the academic community that studies creativity, we need to rethink creativity as love play because artists are lovers. You interview them, as I have, for 30 years or more, and you find out that the reason somebody becomes an artist or a scientist, I've met mathematicians who told me, when I do math, I'm the king of the jungle. That's passion. You know what a nerd is, right? A nerd is someone whose passion is, instead of being directed to more romantic interests, is dedicated to science and mathematics. And I've been a nerd in my life. My wife calls me a recovering nerd. And I come to you today with understanding that it's always about love. I come here to share some good news and some even better news. So let's start with the good news. Can we go back to my, there we go, there it is, okay. I feel very strongly that we are entering and are on the cusp of an age of love on this planet. It sure doesn't feel that way on April 12th, 2026. I know that. But I can tell you this, we're just at the beginning of a new millennium, and every millennium has its own theme. The last millennium was really focused on issues of the mind. You think about, what was this millennium about, this last millennium? Exploration. It began with Leif Erikson exploring North America. And conquest, no question, Norman conquest, 1066, who remembers your European history. And all of the aspects of the mind have been developed extraordinarily in this last millennium. I mean, look at what's happened, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, the digital age, the explosion of information that's happening in the world. And I really do think that it's an age of miracle and wonders as I pull my high-powered computer out of my pocket. And at the same time, it's hard not to admit that this age of focused on the mind so much has put us out of balance. The mind is really good at making distinctions. As somebody who's dedicated my life to research and the exploration of the intellect and the search for truth, I can tell you that what our minds, our intellects are really good at is slicing and dicing the world into finer and finer pieces. And as has been said by many people, the mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. It is a terrible master because when the mind predominates, we're seeing everything in the realm of distinctions. And what an age focused more on the heart that would bring us back into balance recognizes that at the core, there's a common link or ground connecting us all. And the heart, that unification, it isn't something the mind is good at, but it's something the heart is excellent at. And so part of the reason an age of love is coming is because I don't know if humanity makes it if we don't make the shift. So that's one issue. We have to bring things back into balance. But the other thing, and I find this tremendously ironic and therefore delightful, is that the age of the mind culminated in academia, in science and mathematics, and science and mathematics in the last part of the last millennium all converged on a realization that if we get it, is revolutionary. It shifts entirely our conception of love. It shifts entirely our connection to one another and the universe at large. And this is not coming from mystics. You know, my beloved wife, Maria, she says, well, you're not saying anything new. You know, if you look at what Jesus or Buddhists or the Buddha or the Taoists have been saying all along, they're saying this language. Yeah, but the thing is that academics don't listen to it. The scientists and mathematicians and professors and philosophers, they don't listen to what the Taoists and the Buddhists and the mystics and the Gnostics have to say. But when a physicist and a mathematician says, hey, folks, pay attention to this, they shift. And when their way of thinking shifts, whether you like this or not about the experts and scholars of our society, the rest of us shift. It took us a while, but we did finally decide that the earth goes around the sun instead of the other way around. You know, so those people do have an impact on us. And so there's a paradigm shift that has yet to happen. But we can make it happen because we can embrace this shift. So what is that shift I'm talking about? It began in 1947 with the discovery of the hologram by Dennis Gabor. A hologram is a visual image created by a laser, and it has many very interesting properties that distinguish it from other photographic images. But the one that intrigues me, have I gone too far into the darkness? Sorry, I'll try not to. I got to remember I was coached not to, and I'm doing it anyway. I like to get close to you, you know, that's my issue. So the quality that a hologram has is that if you shatter a hologram into its pieces, each piece carries the whole image. This isn't a hologram, but it illustrates how water droplets are kind of like a hologram in this respect. Every single droplet carries the whole image, just like a hologram. Now that's an order, a pattern, a structural, organizational way of being that science hadn't recognized before. And then in 1980, two very significant things happened in the same year. The first is the discovery of fractals by mathematician Benoit Mandelbrot. So fractals were kind of known, but what Mandelbrot did was he took high-powered computers at IBM and he graphed visually the solution to a set of equations. And that's what the Mandelbrot set. It's simply a set of equations that begins with 1 and then ascends to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and goes up the line. What you see in the Mandelbrot set, let's go back to it. Oh no, let's see, the wrong button. There we go. Will it reload? There we go. What you see when you look at the Mandelbrot set, and there's a slow, deep Mandelbrot zoom that you can find on YouTube that I love to look at, is that when you look at the entire image, there's a motif, and the same motif repeats itself at every level of organization. So as you zoom into this is a graphical solution of a set of mathematical equations, you keep encountering the same motif over and over again. Just like the hologram, every part, every level contains the whole. And so that type of structural representation where an order in which the whole is contained in every part, I'm calling panholism. That's all it is. Panholism isn't an ideology. It's not a belief system. It's a phenomenon that's observable in the world. Panholism exists in fractals and in holograms. In 1980, along comes physicist David Bohm, and if I had to tell you anything about him, I would say brilliant, unprecedented, groundbreaking physicist. A lot of people didn't understand his work. I've read this book, Wholeness and the Implicate Order, so many times, and I feel like I always discover something more, and I'm just barely scratching the surface. But what he says in this book is based on certain quandaries and paradoxes that exist in physics and science that haven't been resolved. We need to revisit the evidence that the universe is pan-holistic, that the core reality is undivided wholeness and flowing movement, and that undivided wholeness embeds itself in every layer of the universe at the same time. I mean, I don't know about you, but that moves me, man. And in what's called the implicate order. And the implicate order isn't some spiritual mumbo jumbo. What he's saying is this order needs to exist in order to make sense of certain paradoxes like wave-particle duality. Why does sometimes matter and energy look like a wave and sometimes like a particle? Because the undivided wholeness of the universe, of nature, lives, which I'm calling the one, abides equally in each of them, and so can express itself as a particle one time when you're looking at it, and can express itself as a wave another time, because wholeness is wholeness. You know, it's whole. It has everything, of course. So it resolves these quandaries in science that scientists can't resolve when they're stuck in their mind in the distinctions and separations of the universe. And the reason I think that academic psychology, science, physics, other areas haven't embraced this yet is because to understand undivided wholeness requires not the mind, but it requires the heart. I can tell you this, and this is why I'm standing here before you today. I discovered that the pan-holistic universe is real because I've experienced it, and you can experience it. It's not that grand, highfalutin a thing. That's what I'm saying. You can experience what it's like to be an embodiment of the one. The one abides in you as it abides in everything. That's the really, really good news I come bearing today. And that's not anything other than a fact of physics, okay? Now, this is a modern version of the good news that Jesus came to bring. I mean, gospel means good news. What's the good news? The kingdom of heaven is within you. If you understand that, everything follows from it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Why? Because the kingdom of heaven that lives in you is living in your neighbor. And love your enemies, which is really hard. Love your enemies because the kingdom of heaven abides in them too. They just don't know it. We are living in a paradoxical reality. In that reality, at the same time, we see ourselves as individual tiny pieces in a huge universe that's infinite. But at the same time, whether we see it or not, we are each one of us an embodiment of the one, of the undivided wholeness of nature. The undivided wholeness of nature abides in you, and in you, and in you, and in you, and in every single person here, as it does in plants and animals and the cells of your body, the organ systems, etc. It's the way the universe is structured. So what's love got to do with it, to quote the great Tina Turner? Well, love is not something I care to define, but I can tell you what I feel. I feel that I realize my connection with the beloved such that lover and beloved are one. I don't know where I end and you begin. What's mine is yours. What's yours is mine. That's the nature of love. But when you're one with your beloved, when you feel that merging in love, what are you one with? Because I cease to exist as an independent entity when I'm immersed in love with my beloved. And so the answer in a pan-holistic universe is that when you're one with somebody, when you have the experience of connecting with the beloved in your life, whether it be a person, your child, your spouse, your partner, your pet, your plant, whatever it is, when you connect at that level, you may not know it, but what you're connecting is the one in you is recognizing the one in your beloved. You're saying to your beloved, hey, That's me in there. You know, when we say, I am Victor, I am Ariana, I am Jake, the least interesting part of that statement is the last word. Because, well, we know it's a sinking ship. I see a lot of gray hair in myself, first of all, and also when I look around the room. We know it's coming. You know, life is short and precious and not forever, as that beautiful song that you did, Jake, says. And that's an important thing, you know. But at the same time, if I said to you, the only one that has ever said, I am, you know, that's what the great teachers have been trying to say. There's only one who has ever said, I am. If you connect at the level of wholeness, and that one is abiding in you and is abiding in me, and in love, it's a recognition we have with one another of who that person is. The one, the only one. I am that I am. You know, what is that meaning? That's a really strange sentence, I am that I am. But it's saying regardless of what you are, it's the same I am that's being that. I am that. I am. So, great big love has certain characteristics. I call them the 3 U's. The first is unifying. Of course, all love is unifying. I mean, you feel some sense of connection, of intimacy, of kinship with the beloved. That's what love's about. But great big love goes further than that. It's unconditional. Why? Because I am connecting with the one in me is connecting with the one in you. I'm letting the one take over, and not that little piece of the universe, but the whole within me taking over. And so the one in me is recognizing the one in you in great big love. So of course it's unconditional, because the one is the one regardless of what you do or say. And people are doing and saying some really crappy things these days. But the challenge is, can we see through that? It's hard. You know, it's very difficult to see through that from the little piece to the whole. That's a hard thing to do, especially when somebody's strutting their little piece and making it seem big. And so great big love has to be universal, because the one abides in everything in the universe. So if I'm going to love in a pan-holistic universe, which, hey, whether you knew it or not, you were already living in a pan-holistic universe, and now I'm just letting you know you are. And that changes how we are in the world, because if you get it, that you're loving in a pan-holistic universe where the wholeness of nature abides in everyone and everything, then I'm not going to be a lover with a little L. I'm going to be the lover with a big L, because there's only one. The one in me recognizes the one in you. That's the one in me recognizes the one in you. So that's a beautiful thing to connect at that level. And the challenge is, can we do that? Can we spread that net as wide as possible? Can we spread that net? Because that's the challenge. And it's not just about that, but let our love be as great as it can be. Let it take us as high as it can take us. Let us feel it as deeply as we can feel it. Love, period, man. How far can it take you? How transcendent and transformative can love be in your life? And so if you take love to its greatest, I feel in a pan-holistic universe that it's the one reconnecting with the one and seeing through the layers and the veils to the actual core reality of all things. And so I won't lie to you, I come with ulterior motives. I am aspiring to invite a group of people to create paradise on earth. The original word paradise comes from an Arabic term that meant a playground for the kings and queens, for royalty, a playground for royalty. But the royalty in those eras tended to also be embodiments of the divine. So paradise is a divine playground. And I can see how, if we connect with great big love such that the one in me recognizes the one in you, imagine living in a place, in a setting, where we're going to live that life that way. And we're going to be among other people who are going to operate and in a space of love in a pan-holistic universe. So I think at the very least, we can create paradise in and around us, in our close proximity. But if two or more of us connect that way, I think it becomes a society, at least a family, and then a community, and then a society. We can create a community based on love. I remember my grandfather telling me about the little town on an island called Marmara, where he grew up. And everybody knew everybody and was friends, or many cases, relatives of everybody on the island. And so you went and you bought your meat from the butcher, you went and you bought your greens, your produce from the greengrocer, and all of those interactions were done in a kind of loving way. Because I'm giving you something you want, food, and you're giving me something I need to have to thrive, which is the money that allow me to buy other things. And they understood that those were the interactions. They were neighbors doing commerce with neighbors. You know, now commerce is feeling more like a winner takes all kind of proposition. You know, and it's an exchange of essence. That's what it's supposed to be. It's exchange of essence in the marketplace. And so imagine creating a world with an economic system that's all based on, I'm going to treat you as the lover, as the embodiment of the one. And so while I gain something from my interaction with you, you gain something too. It's very important. Because if you're the beloved, then I need to show up for you in that way. You know, I need to show up for you as the beloved. I need to treat you with the honor and the reverence and the care and the decency and the kindness that you deserve. Of course. And the same thing, you know, I took this picture off the internet, and I love the idea of this paradise where other people are happy and celebrating, and there's just a leopard strolling around among them. And everybody's getting along with different species. Isn't that great? And so anyhow, but paradise can be whatever we want it to be. And I think the reason we don't have paradise on earth in 2026, because not enough of us have come together to say, what does that look like? What does it feel like? What did it take for us to do it? What kinds of actions can we take? Because I think that if enough of us visualized, it would happen. There's a 3.5% rule, you know, and 3.5% of the population changes the entire society. So it doesn't take that many of us who want to play that game of being the lover and treating the universe, you know, as love play. The universe was made by love, for love, of love. And so the chant connection, starting April 26th at 3 p.m., we're going to be doing a monthly chant circle called the Great Big Love Chant here. And I'm giving away this book. This is my first book called The Chanter's Guide. I apprenticed with a shaman from Oaxaca who he used chanting as a vehicle for healing, and that's what he taught me. But what he taught me more greatly is that chanting can be used as a vehicle for creating or manifesting. And he used to say to me, fake it till you make it. And I realized what he was saying with respect to chanting is chant it until it is so. Because if you chant these things like we're going to chant in a moment, it can be so. That's something I've discovered in my years of chanting, is that chanting is a powerful tool for manifestation. You set intention, you invoke. What we're going to do in these chant circles is we're going to invoke the one within ourselves. We're going to let the one take over, and we're going to experience love from the standpoint of an embodiment of the one, of the undivided wholeness of nature. And we're going to sing our way to that. That's what, and then we're going to use that with the intention to create paradise on earth for ourselves and for one another. And that's the mission. We're going to invoke the one within ourselves, and in doing that, we're going to create paradise on earth. Thank you. I'll just say, oh yeah, I forgot to mention this in the last thing. Can we put that slide up real quick? I have a new YouTube series called Great Big Love. If you search Great Big Love in my name, you'll find it. And it's talking about exactly what we're talking about today. Now, in the spirit of chanting and manifestation, we're going to do a very familiar song. Are you going to find the one, Love? It's a Bob Marley song, and we're only going to do the first chorus. So, because as soon as you just keep it that simple, it turns into a chant. I am not a professional musician or singer. Those who've heard me sing can tell you that. I don't sing to be heard. I actually want you to drown me out. Okay, so I really invite you to chant along.